Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Rafae, Iqbal, and in today's show we'll be talking about the upcoming budget and Pakistan's economic survey report that was presented today by the Finance Minister Mohammad Aurangzeb for the fiscal year 2023 till 24. Of course, in that regards, as we know that the budget is to be presented, this is going to be a very crucial and a very important budget, as it is not just a budget, it is also going to set the groundwork for the IMF bailout package as well. In that regards, we know that the country has been seeing a lot of positive economic indicators. The Pakistan Stock Exchange is at an all-time high. The rupee has stabilized very significantly. Inflation rate is down as well, and the State Bank of Pakistan has reduced the monetary policy rate by 1.5%. And the FBR revenue growth has increased by 30%, as the Finance Minister stated today in this presser regarding the economic survey. The Finance Minister also emphasized on reforms, the much needed reforms that he has been talking about in the tax sector and the energy domains and other privatization of the state-owned enterprises, the loss-making state-owned enterprises. And he also touched upon different sectors regarding Pakistan's economy and how reforms are needed in those sectors, and they're the need of the hour. And he also talked about out-of-the-box solutions regarding different sectors such as agriculture, IT, minerals and mining. Regarding the agriculture sector, the Finance Minister also stated that the bumper crops of this year have significantly contributed to Pakistan's economic revival, and he also praised Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif that the economic revival is taking place under his dynamic leadership. And of course, Prime Minister has also playing a very proactive role in increasing the country's foreign direct investment. He has been embarking on different official visits to various countries and providing them with opportunities so they can further increase their business-to-business linkages with Pakistan. The Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has also shown and expressed his determination and commitment to undertaking the reforms that he has talked about as well, such as in the tax sector, where the Prime Minister talked about how the tax litigation needs to be expedited, and the FBR's operations need to be expedited as well, and the officers in the Federal Board of Revenue need to be on their toes, as it is the financial year closing as well. We'll be deliberating on all these different aspects of the budget and the economic survey that is presented by the Finance Minister today. In the studios, we've been joined by Senior Analyst Farrukh Pitafi. Thank you for your time in joining us. Along with that, we've been joined by geopolitical analyst Faisal, and on Skype we've been joined by our guest Ashraf Malkham, who is a senior journalist. Thank you all for your time and being part of the show. I'll start my conversation from Ashraf Malkham regarding how do you assess the impact of the standby arrangement that Pakistan entered earlier up till now, when a new budget is going to be presented tomorrow in the Parliament? Well, we're having trouble connecting to Ashraf Malkham. Farrukh Pitafi, I'll start with you. Considering how do you assess the standby arrangement that Pakistan entered for 9 months up till now, when the budget is going to be presented tomorrow in the Parliament?
Thank you, Rafae. I think that when you're going to talk about the crowning achievement of the current government and essentially the Prime Minister, who was former Prime Minister as well when we signed SPA, I think SBA itself is going to be a crowning achievement. And one has to actually give credit to the caretaker finance minister in the intervening period too. Pakistan did whatever was necessary to ensure that Pakistan actually complies with the requirements of the program. Now, let us, because SBA is one thing, of course, we are going to move forward to another EFF with the IMF in coming days. What is important regarding this budget that is going to be unveiled tomorrow? What do we know about that so far is also important. We know that the ECC has approved 3.5 trillion rupees worth of PSDP, or for that matter development budget. Overall reports that I have seen so far is that the overall outlay of the budget is going to be 18 trillion rupees. Now we don't know what exactly is the exact target of fiscal deficit for that matter. We don't know regarding many other aspects that are going to be unveiled tomorrow. But I'm sure as the information starts trickling in, there will be more to discuss. Regarding economic survey today, the finance minister actually very rightly pointed out that there was 0.2% contraction, and that should worry us. Of course, there are 2 or 3 concerns, major issues that are there. One was the interest rate or inflation, because of which the contraction was a serious issue that was taking place. And then, of course, power sector, prices were also a cause. That's why perhaps our LSM, large-scale manufacturing, did not do that great. If there is any redeeming quantity that one has to look at in the past 1 year, that is agriculture. Pakistan posted bumper crops, and Pakistan posted quite a significant growth in the agriculture sector. So the out-of-the-box solution that you were talking about earlier essentially will have to include agriculture sector, because if we actually align all the factors regarding agriculture, and then we can take benefit from SIFC, and for that matter their land information management system, we can actually improve the output of agriculture and start adding value to agricultural produce as well, which is going to go a long way in the current situation, because all over the world economic issues are very serious one.
I'll also like to include Dr. Sajid Amin, who has just joined us, who is the Deputy Executive Director of SDPI. Of course, Farrukh Pitafi mentioned that Pakistan's agriculture sector has shown positive growth, and that is what the Finance Minister also said. The IT sector has also seen a lot of potential growth, and the record exports as well. With that, how do you think the SIFC or the other finance ministry or other operational departments of the country relating to finance and economy, they could identify the sectors which could contribute to quicker revenue generation?
And Dr. Sajid, if you could also help us understand what are your basic expectations from the budget, because there are many aspects which still need to be covered. How do you exactly see the budget, and what are the main nodal points that we have to look at?
Thank you. I think that let me respond to the last question, because that is it is the budget debate. I think to understand this budget is different from the other budgets. We have always been asking that this is a tough budget, but this is genuinely a tough budget, because this itself is a prior for IMF. Full budget itself is a prior. I mean, you have to meet those expectations of IMF, the targets, the conditions, the tax policy changes, which are very, really tough. So government is walking on a very thin rope, actually. It's a very thin line. It has to walk tomorrow. And it will be really test of government's balancing skills, that how it can balance it. Because on stake is IMF's programs, number one. So we are expecting a tough budget, which mainly focused on showing a commitment of the government that this is the first prior that we are delivering to show our sincerity, show our commitment for another IMF program that we are hoping soon to get given. And this is very important program for Pakistan to have, because the external balancing, the external finance gap pressures are so high that we don't have anything other way out than the IMF. So that is the number one. But I think one thing that we will have to see, where does the government try to balance it? I mean, when IMF is asking that give us more revenues, for example, it's 2,000 billion extra revenue. Now the government has to show where it is coming from. If it is coming from the salaried income, as usually it has been in the past trend. If it's coming from GST, it will be very regressive and very inflationary. And we may see a sort of a wave of inflation coming back that's just started easing out. But at the same time, if government can show tomorrow bringing agriculture sector, bringing retail sector, bringing real estate sector in the tax net. So I think this is where it can sort of convince government, and maybe we can see it tomorrow, that there are no as perceived raise in the salaried class taxes, tax rates, and the GST. The government will try to stick around GST 18% and maybe not that kind of hike that is in the market speculation that it can sort of increase to 45% or above. So this, if this comes this way, the government will be putting the economy on the downward trajectory, despite we will be having another IMF growth. So the government's challenge is to bring new avenues after avenues that will remain. The rest we have seen. I mean, you have that information that the growth rate of 3.6% we are expecting, more or less, we will be able to meet. Similarly, the inflation target may remain higher than expectation. The government is budgeting 12%. But if we go through GST increase and the salaried income increase and the petroleum levy reaching to 90%, I mean 90 rupees a liter, we may say this target is very difficult, keeping people cost of living on the higher side.
Quick explanation. Whenever we talk about negotiations with IMF, every time we hear that they are asking about reforming the revenue collection. Why is it that usually expenditure side is not something that is debated, sir? Dr. Sajid.
One is that our expenditure is already on the very downward side. I mean, it's if you see good per capita spending on health, education, and others. But I think one thing that this government should have avoided, that is taking burden of the programs which actually fall after 18th Amendment in the provinces, sort of the prerogative. But I think given the government's dependence on the political partners, for example, Pakistan People's Party in the Sindh, and having some working relation with the KP government, there is a fear that the government may have taken sort of many of the programs which is actually under the prerogative of, it should go be financed by the provinces actually. So this is, I think you're very right, that the partners, the development partners, the government itself needs to push its brake actually on. And that expenditure which belongs to the provinces should go to the provinces. But I think the coalition, that will be pushing government to take some of those expenditures there. And I do agree with you that the IMF and the other partners need to push government on spending efficiencies as well. But the main focus remained on the revenue side, because I think this is where the government see, or the development partners see more margin, because, you know, most probably this year it's 8 to 9% of GDP total tax revenue that we are collecting. So this is very, very low, and actually this has decreased. I was just seeing economic survey of Pakistan released today. If you compare it from 2016 onward, the tax as a ratio of GDP is actually declining over the time. So that's why I think the big push comes always on the revenue side more than expenditure. But I agree that we need to rationalize expenditure. Number one, prioritizing the right expenditure, which should go sort of increasing the efficiency of spending, the public spending, that needs to be increased. And any unproductive spending, particularly as I mentioned, which fall under the prerogative of provinces, need to be avoided and should go to the provinces.
Yeah, Dr. Sajid, when we obviously talk about the current finance minister, we know that he has been talking in past about going for fresh program of $6 to $8 billion with the IMF. And now in today's presser, of course, he has reiterated that Pakistan will be going for a fresh program, IMF program, to further cement the advancements which we have made in our economy. I mean, for last 2 years, and the current government as well, they have been trying to stabilize the economy. Do you think that it's a very good idea to go for a fresh program so that we can further cement our economy?
I think there are two sort of components of your question. The number one is that is it a good idea to go to IMF? I think this is the involuntary sort of the force that we have to go to. We don't have any other option. So we are not going it by choice. We don't have any other option given our financing gap and financing needs. If we don't go, the pressure on the rupee will be coming back because it's roughly 25 to 30 billion a year that we have to pay. So all the external financing from the bilateral countries, from the multilateral consortiums, it's always depending on the IMF program. If we have IMF on board, this will open up that window of external financing, which we really needed at this point of time. Otherwise, our reserves around $8-9 billion with the State Bank, and overall around $13-14 billion. So they can't finance your even of a month import. It's a very small number. So we have to go to IMF, number one. And I think this is right. I mean, there are three ways that we can see into economy. The one is that, is it better now? It is better if your reference point is a couple of years back, when everybody was talking to default. Rupee was the day up, the day down. So there was so much spikes, and the volatility of the currency was really eroding the trust in the currency itself. So if we compare with that, it's good. Inflation 30% now, sort of 11%, 12%. It's much better. So that is one way to see the economy. But the second, I think, is what are the people getting from this stabilization?
Right, of course.
That is the question that government has to deal in this way. And if they have to do another episode of stabilization, it should not come at the cost of people. We have to now balance. There is a time that we need to pass on the benefits. If there is a stabilization, whatever the benefits are available, they should be passed to us. And this is where this budget may be beginning and the starting point. For example, I would be seeing this, despite this, that we have to use taxes, despite this. But will the overall fiscal policy promoting economic activity, or it will be shrinking the economic activity? So if overall your fiscal planning or the fiscal policy is overall ultimately net shrinking economy, then I think this will not be good stabilization, because it will be very, very unsustainable ad hoc stabilization that we have achieved 20-22 times earlier in the last 70 years, but nothing gain ultimately. So we have to balance this.
Right, Dr. Sajid, growth comes after stabilization. I'd like you to stay with us as we also take views from senior journalist Ashraf Malkham. Thank you for joining us and being part of the conversation. As we know, how feasible do you think, considering how our conversation has built up, how feasible do you think it would be for the government to fully implement the IMF prescribed measures along with providing relief to the masses, because the Prime Minister is focused and emphasized on creating a budget that facilitates the people as well as fulfills the conditions of the IMF?
Well, it's a really very critical situation, not good for the political government. But you see, as of today's press conference by the finance minister and the other things, there will be a hard time for Pakistan to get the new program. The first thing which Pakistan should have not done, but they did it yesterday in the NEC session. When the NEC session presented the budget, they allocated a good number of development schemes on a political basis, which increased the overall size of the development budget. IMF has time and again asked Pakistan government to avoid political spending, to avoid funding the development projects will fall in the preview of the provincial government, especially after the 18th Amendment, when most of the resources have gone over to the provincial governments. The federal government should stop funding the development projects in preview of the provincial governments. Two important things which was done yesterday. Number one, it should have not done. It should have not been done. I'm saying again and again. The government decided to allocate some funds, a good chunk of funds for the development scheme, totally started on the political basis. Today, finance minister was also asked a question about this. He said, oh, look, we have to complete the ongoing projects. Of course, there are ongoing projects, but initially, the government has made the criteria. The number one priority will be the projects which are funded by the foreign exchequer, and they will be completed on priority basis. Number two will be the strategic projects. So IMF will object to the spending on a political basis. Number two, there are some other things which still IMF is pressurizing government of Pakistan. They're asking for the increase number of decrease number of slabs, increase threshold of the income tax on government employees and other employees getting the salary. Similarly, another issue is the IMF wants government of Pakistan to complete its privatization process as soon as possible on fast track. Government is also working on it. But if you look at the allied government, other allied parties which are part of government, yeah, at least they are supporting the government of present government, they are deadly against the privatization program. Today, one thing was very good. Finance minister was very clear. That universities, madrasas, and some other things can be run on charity, but country cannot be run on charity. Country can only be run on taxes. We have to pay taxes, but the difficult areas where we are unable to impose taxes, which fell in the purview of the provincial government, they are the real estate sector, the agriculture sector, as well the properties tax. It comes in the purview of the provincial governments or federal government is facing difficulty to impose taxes on it, and RMF is time and again, the pressurizing the government to use the full potential of the tax which the government have. Presently, as the Pitafi sir perhaps was saying that we have the lowest ratio GDP in percentage to the income tax collection percentage. The GDP is 9%, slightly plus 9%. Now the IMF still saying this is the lowest in the area. Increase it. How to increase it? This is a really difficult thing. Another problem which may government face while negotiation new program is it was decided with the fund that Pakistan government will privatize distribution companies, electricity distribution company, which we call discos. No, government is still silent on them. It has to be a joint effort by all parties sitting in the government as well as in the opposition to join hand and work unanimously to go to the decisions which are being done on the demand of the IMF, but they are also in the interest of the Pakistan government of Pakistan. We're getting more revenue. We're getting rid of the loss, which is about a trillion rupees a year. This is a good amount which is you wasted in the loss of running in the loss by the government entities. It should have been done, but IMF is really giving tough time to Pakistan, and hopefully in coming days, negotiation with the IMF will not be easy one.
Malam Saab, it's good that you've highlighted that there are certain aspect of taxing that can obviously be done provincially, like provincial government can do it. Do you not think that this is the best time for the federal government, because under them there are three of the provincial governments, I mean Punjab, Sindh and Balochistan, that actually belong to the ruling alliance, and in that context, I mean, there's only one provincial government, and that is of KPK, that belongs to the opposition party. Rest of three provincial governments. So it would be a super benefit for the federal government to do whatever they prescribe to the provincial governments, so that whatever their sort of goals are, they can achieve in terms of stabilizing the economy as well as smooth running for future as well.
And Malkham Saab, because you're going to talk about tax rates and tax levels, let me also ask you, is there a possibility, because we keep on talking about GST as in our general sales tax, but there is then this concept of goods and services tax like India's. Is there going to be a time when we can actually also visualize a tax that takes care of all three tiers of taxation and moving forward and can solve all these problems? And regarding development funds, 3.5 trillion rupees worth of development fund. Do you think our bureaucracy and implementing institutions even have the capacity to carry out such a huge commitment, sir?
So there are a number of questions. I will try to respond one by one. Number one, my question is about the provincial governments which are the allied of the government. Let me say, KPK is not allied. There is an opposition in federal government. They are deadly against the federal government is a fact. But the two governments, the Karachi government and the Balochistan government, they are run by the People's Party. And Balochistan People's Party and Noon League are allied, and Sindh People's Party is single-handedly running the government. If you look at the today's political developments, Pakistan People's Party has been demanding since 3-4 days. They're agitating, they're demanding, they're protesting that they were not consulted in budget making exercise. They're asking for more funds. Another like MPM, they're asking for more development projects in the Karachi. They're saying we should be given the development funds. Karachi is very important. Everybody is saying about it, but sorry, but funds are not being provided to the Karachi for development projects. While on the other side, IMF saying federal government should not fund the project development projects falling under the purview of the provincial government. So People's Party is pressurizing time and again, asking for more funds, asking for more development projects. This is the really problem for government. Though Pakistan People's Party is supporting the federal government, but they are not part of the government. They say we are supporting the government, we are not allied parties. So we have our right to have a concern, which they have shown. See 2-3 days press conferences in Lahore and Karachi and Islamabad. Whole People's Party is complaining they are not being taken into confidence in budget making exercise, the allocation of funds, especially as to my information. Sindh government has the more demand for Sindh government is demanding for more projects. The more important and dangerous thing is Sindh government is going to have the highest development budget in next year. This is about 700 billion rupees, more than Punjab. So this development program has to be run by the foreign funds for the foreign loan. This is the dangerous thing. All government is getting provincial as well as the federal government. They are getting loan to development to run the development scheme. It should have not been done. Development should have not been done with the borrowed money, with the loans. Our first priority should be to get rid of the debt. We are under debt. Everybody, every institution, and every think tank is saying Pakistan's debt is not sustainable. It should be reduced. It should be fought at war footing. So the Pakistan People's Party, allied of the known league and two provincial governments, is asking for more and more fund, which federal government is not in a position to provide. This can be an issue with the talks with the IMF. Second thing, you asked about the new taxation in the Federal Board of Revenue by the government of Pakistan. As per my information, 1% GST on every item is being increased. This will bring inflation. Another thing, tax exemption on all items, especially edibles and what you can say vehicle and something like this, and decoration and makeup. Every exemption is being built on one side, and other side percentage of GST is being increased in some cases to 35%. This is not good. This is old policy which every government had been doing in the past. Screw the person who is already in tax net. Who is not in tax net, there should be serious effort, but as per today, there is no serious effort to bring those people in the tax net who are not paying the taxes, who are not part of the tax net. So effort should be there. Increase of instead of increasing the percentage of the different taxes. This is income. This export duty, import duty, federal excise duty, or the general sales tax, or the income tax. Income tax, Pakistan is under pressure to reduce the threshold from 50,000 per month income. IMF saying it should be brought in the tax net. Pakistan government is resistant, but pressure is there. Why this pressure is there? Because the sectors which are not in the tax net, sectors which are paying very low to according to the potential, they are not being hooked properly. Government have to strengthen, government have to support the tax machinery to collect from the areas which are not paying proper tax, not their proper share is being paid by them. Government have to take strict action, enforce government's rate, and apply rule for all of them. There should be no exemption. There should be no exemption. And all people who have taxable income should be brought in tax, whether they are traders, whether they are retailers, there was a real sector or the agriculture sector, they should pay tax.
Dr. Sajid Amin, coming to you, there's also talk of renegotiation of the NFC award, considering we're talking about the provincial and the federal federations relationships. How would you comment on that?
Thank you. I think this is really interesting to see this question coming from your program, because very few are talking at the root cause of Pakistan's tax problems, rather the overall many of these problems. But before that, I just one comment on the taxation capacity of the government, federal government on the provincial subjects like agriculture and property. I think government has a very simple solution for that. Tax income. I mean, the income tax is under the prerogative of the federal government. So irrespective of the source, what government has to do only that irrespective of the source, any income beyond threshold will be taxed. So if government go by income tax and wealth tax, it can kind of bypass that major problem coming from the agriculture sector and the other sectors. So we should be starting taxing the income irrespective of the source. That will help a lot federal government, and it should do actually in this tax. And if it doesn't do, we will be heading towards again another maybe a bad budget, which will be inflationary and any other impact. Coming to NFC, I think this is a very fundamental question, but from a forward-looking perspective, from a positive view, we need an FC. We need these arrangements that we had in 18th Amendment, but there is always a margin to improve those amendments, sort of the mechanisms that we have. In an FC, there are two problems when it comes to tax revenues particularly. I mean, there can be multiple, but in terms of tax revenue, where we need to improve on, number one, the weight per tax is so low that it does not incentivize provinces to invest in tax infrastructure. It's only 7% weight. So if I'm getting 93 rupees, of which 82 are coming by my population size, why should I be worried about taxing or investing in the tax infrastructure because it doesn't get me much from the government? So number one, this tax weight needs to be increased in an NFC, so in the upcoming NFC. Number two, the formula, the indicator of tax itself needs a revision. We are not sort of calculating or considering the tax collected as a potential of tax. It's simple and absolute tax collection. So Punjab, the largest provinces, the larger economy than Balochistan, will always collect more tax in absolute terms, giving the big economy size. But if you go on the tax effort, that how much a province is collecting compared to its potential, Balochistan may be doing better. So we need this revision in this formula to have. And finally, on NFC, I think, while it's a longer-term question, but as you just asked, we need to make NFC a technical body, not a political. Right now, it's a political consensus forum, which decisions are sort of very delayed. If you see, it's always 10 years. We have just completed half of the NFC that were due in the duration that we had to do. 50% have been only successfully completed. Other remained inconclusive. So I think we need to make it a technical body instead of a political body. But my last comment on tax, we need a fundamental shift in tax indicator and the weight of the tax in the NFC. This is the only way that you can incentivize provinces to invest in tax infrastructure. The present NFC will never help provinces and ultimately the federal to collect taxes.
Exactly. Dr. Sajid, a very quick question. If we go through obviously today's presser by Finance Minister, he has rightly pointed out that inflation has dropped down 11.8%.
To 11 point.
11.2%. And in this context, I mean, earlier, of course, Ashraf Malkham Saab, he was highlighting that if we increase GST by 1%, it would eventually, of course, increase the inflation, the existing inflation. Where do you see the situation sitting up in coming days if we have the increase in the GST and at the same time knowing that the current government has actually helped to drop down the inflation by 11.2%?
11.8%. It's been dropped to 11.8%.
I think I hope that government doesn't increase GST to 19%. To be very honest, let's hope that it doesn't do. But if it does, of course, it will be having very, very high inflationary pressures, particularly if you combine it with petrol levy, increasing another 30 rupees per liter or 20 rupees per liter. But again, coming to your question, there are two sides. The first one is, where is this sort of a kind of slowdown in inflation coming from? So to me, this is on weak footage. There are three factors which are driving this inflation slowdown, and if we don't that it may rise back, start rising. For example, the one is it's decreasing because it was a high base. We have touched 30%. Ultimately, it has to go down, which we call the peak effect, the floor effect. It touched the peak and then it is slowing down. But most important, this present rise and the decline, particularly in the May, it surprised everybody, including State Bank of Pakistan and the government, even to us. It was a more than expected decline. But to me, coming from an agriculture family, it was expected because your food inflation has been coming down, but not from a positive angle. From an adverse point of view, there is a bumper crop. Nobody is buying your wheat. The flour market has really crashed. The wheat market has crashed. Sort of associated food items, they really have a big, steep decline in the prices. So it is the food inflation which is driving this down. Energy inflation remains high. Housing inflation remains high. And if these two components further increase in the upcoming inflation, and the slowdown, the decline in the food inflation slows down, touching its sort of the base, we may see further reversal in inflation if we go by GST increase, if we go by petroleum levy, and if there is some pressure coming on the rupee going forward. Because if you're eyeing on 3.6% of GDP growth, we will be opening up economy, imports will be increasing slightly. So we may have seen slight adjustments in the rupee, and all these factors can bring that wave of inflation back. Because right now the inflation is not on a very strong footage. Unless your energy inflation comes down, the decline in inflation will be temporary and weak footage.
Right, for Pitafi, at one end we're talking about taxation, and of course we would tax an established.
Malkham
Malkham, your comment first.
Malkham Saab, you can.
Yeah, thank you. There are Pakistan. Federal government of Pakistan cannot act freely. There is a constitutional commitment. Any facility, any concession given under the NFC cannot be withdrawn. This is the law. This is the constitution of Pakistan. So we cannot revisit NFC. We can revisit for upward allocation, not for the downward. So the only solution with the federal government is left with is to decide which project is to be funded by the federal government and which project is to be funded by the provincial government, especially the departments which have been devolved to the provincial governments. Law and order, education, health, social sector, just the Benazir income support program, why this is being funded by the federal government. There are provincial issues. They should be funded by the provincial governments, but the weak federal government cannot stand before the strong provincial governments, as is the position of the today. So government this is a handicap of the government. IMF has time and again asked the federal government to revisit the NFC. Every time federal government says this is a constitutional requirement.
Right, Ashraf Malkham, I'd love to hear more of your views, but unfortunately that's all the time we have for today. We'll have to wrap up today's show. I'd like to thank all of our panelists, Senior Analyst Farrukh Pitafi, Geopolitical Analyst Raja Faisal, Senior Journalist Ashraf Malkham, and Dr. Sajid Amin, the Deputy Executive Director of SDPI. Of course, the upcoming budget, it has a lot of aspects that we would have discussed if we had more time, but unfortunately that's all we have for today. The budget will be presented tomorrow, and we'll have different aspects unfolded as well as the debates will go on. Regarding that, we'll keep updating you and see you same time tomorrow and discuss the prospects of the budget and of course the details regarding that. See you same time tomorrow. Till then, take care.